Looks like we have Jim, Jennifer, and Tammy. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah,
Okay, good.
but then I'm nearsighted anyway, so I can read real small.
All right. Is it real small?
Yeah, on my laptop, yeah.
Oh, okay.
I can read it.
Give it another minute or so. See if anybody's going to show up.
It's in kind of cinerama mode, so you're losing a lot of space at the top and the bottom.
Hey Jim, I'm still Facebook friends with Donna Lear,
Oh
and
yeah?
I mean I don't chat with her that much, but just this morning she did an update to her story, and it looks like her and Ron were on camels somewhere in the desert.
Oh really? Good.
They were they were travel fiends, always going someplace. It seems like.
Well, I don't know. How did they? It sounds like if they're on camels, they're out of the country, I would
Yeah,
assume.
yeah. I was going to look and see if there was a date on it, but
It's probably Africa
I don't know that I'd be anywhere right now.
or Asia, somewhere in Asia. But I don't think you can't travel. So
Yeah, maybe it's just wishful thinking. Maybe she's remembering back
yeah.
to where it was. Let's see. Oh no, it's actually her background is these camels. No, I guess
Oh,
you
I
guys.
see.
She was without power the last 18 hours. That's what she posted. She
Oh
broke out the camping gear. Have you been without power?
no,
Hmm.
which is kind of rare actually, because usually we're one of the first ones to lose it.
Yeah, I think she's up off Skyline Road someplace, if I
Oh yeah,
remember
well you
right.
can lose it up there.
Yeah.
There, we're in a very heavily wooded area, but it's not high up like that. And we all the wires are up in the air, except for the direct ones to our house are underground, but it goes to a pole that's about 2 blocks away, or not even maybe a block away, and so we're always losing our power. There were some really big trees that came down around here.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Just
up by Maplewood School, there was a big um, uh, spruce tree that went down across the road, and I don't know, 60-foot tree,
hmm.
which we get around here every once in a while.
Yeah. Well, my my home in Vancouver is out in wooded area, and we've got some big, I mean, 30-inch trunks, big fir trees, and I often wonder um,
Oh, I've been
what it.
talking and nobody. I'm sorry. I've been talking and
Nobody's been listening.
nobody's been listening. I was on mute. No wonder nobody answered. Sorry about
Yeah,
that.
that's it. But anyway, I've often wondered about those trees, and luckily we're on kind of an east side of the hill,
Oh,
so they're shielded from the wind. But
oh
yeah,
yeah,
it's
we got big Douglas firs on our property. We're in the city, but it they come. We haven't had a big one go down.
yeah. We haven't either, thank goodness. We used to have pretty significant limbs, fall, 5-inch diameter limbs, but we cleared all the trees out from around the house a number of years ago and haven't had that issue. Once they started falling on the cars, we knew we needed to do something.
Yeah, we've got some leaning over our house, so every time the wind blows, it gets scary. Right over
Yeah.
our bedroom.
And Tim, you're in kind of, it's not a brand new development, but one of the big mistakes when you cut trees down to build houses is you weaken the root systems haven't enabled them to support themselves, and so wind can just
Yeah.
really knock them down.
Yeah. Yeah. We're hoping to move before a tree falls on the house. A tree fell, about 30 feet away. So it's just a matter of time. Okay, we'll get started. Jim, Jennifer, and Tammy. So yeah, a lot less people in the afternoon than we have this morning. We had about 18. So I'll just go over pretty much the same material went over with them. Did everyone get this document? I emailed it out 2 days ago. If not, I can send it over to you on Zoom. It's called ESP Employee Grid Calculations. It's a PDF. Let me know if you don't have it, and I will send it to you. Jim,
Yeah,
actually, you
go
might
ahead
not
and
have
send
it.
it.
I don't think I actually have you on the email list.
Oh, okay, yeah, well, send it to me because I don't think I've seen it. Yeah,
Okay.
that's helpful.
Right, I will definitely send it to you. But you can see it right here, right now. Basically, it's just I want to explain how we get to on the Employees tab, how we get to this. I'm going to pare this down. Okay, I'm already pared down. Center 009. Okay. How we end up with this cost total column over here, which is the total cost of each employee.
Okay.
And the way it starts is, if you look at this, make it a little bit smaller. If you look at the way the total cost calculation works, it starts with annual rate. So here is the annual. Well, actually, before I do that, let me put my my grid back into my saved grid view, because it's a lot of it's based on pay components. There we go, and I'll explain that in just a second. Hang on a second. Get my grid where I want it. So it starts with the annual rate, which comes from the salary plan tab. As I discussed yesterday, the purpose of the salary plan tab is to break down the salary to an hourly rate. And then that hourly rate is applied to a person's work time. So if we know, something is $50 an hour, it would be 50 times 186 times 4.6 hours. A work time is work days times work hours. So basically, you just break down an employee to their hourly component and apply that to how many hours they work in a year, and that becomes their annual rate. And if you look at this document, annual rate from the salary plans, if you scroll down a little bit, you can see annual rate is work hours times work days times the salary plan annual rate. And you can always look at that on the employees tab. You have a plan code here. Notice you have a tooltip glyph. You can select that column, select that cell, let the mouse cursor rest over it for a few seconds, and it gives you a lot of information, because a lot of times we were having to switch between the salary plan tab and then back to the employees, to compare information. But this tooltip will pop up a lot of the pertinent or much used information for you right here, so you don't have to switch to the employee tab. But it tells you that which salary plan step schedule they're on, 2515. This is the name of it, grade, step, how many work days and work hours, and the work time of the salary plan, the annual rate of the salary plan, as far in the model. So if you did a COLA, this would be higher than we didn't do a COLA, so that's why the Infinite Visions amount and the model amount are the same. If there was a COLA, it would be on here. There's two COLAs because you could have, like a 1% the first half of the year and a 1% the second half of the year, and that's controlled by date. There are, for each COLA and for each step, there is a corresponding effective date. The default is the beginning of the fiscal year, which is most of the time what is used. COLAs and steps are just done at the beginning of the year. But we have seen it a lot actually this year because of the COVID stuff, people having to delay COLAs. So if you need to do that, you got to figure out how many days you want them at the first rate and then how many days you want them at the second rate. Find out what that date is of the effective date, and then you could put that in on the salary plans of when the COLA kicks in. Same for stepping. If you wanted to delay a step, you could use the date. I don't think we've ever had anybody delay a step, but you can if you need to. Just a little bit more if there was any additional days added. And then this is kind of the how that delay in COLAs and step works. It breaks it down into the days. So there's 186 work days in the year. And then this says, okay, give them 186 days at the new COLA. And if you were to change the date, it would put some days, without the COLA, and then some days with the COLA. And then if there was a second date, it would go in there. So it breaks it down, it handles it by days. And then it says which benefit plan that salary plan is attached to, which means that's the same benefit plan that the employee is attached to. So this person, she is on the Certified District Employees Benefit Plan. And then how FTE calc, which is what we went over yesterday, that this person's FTE is calculated by her work hours, which is 4.64 over the position work hours, which is probably 8, which would give her a 0.58 FTE. Now this is probably her other funding right here. And you can see that those two combined is for her. This is also default their salary total. So she is 1.0 total, but she has 2 split fundings.
So they both have the same account number.
Right. It must be a different record number. Let me open that up. This is really old database. Probably should have updated it for the demo. So I can open up the employee details to get more information about. Yeah, she has 2 records. So there must have been a reason why we made a separate record. Something must be different about the second record. The way the employee details form works, whatever you have selected up here, these are the properties for just that record.
Check the position number. So
position, licensed kindergarten there. Licensed kindergarten there.
Yeah. What's the pay type code? That's the other thing.
Licensed kindergarten.
Yeah, it's the same.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but there must have been a reason why why it was done for that employee.
Yeah. So this is
There's
a good
no TSA on one of them.
Oh yeah, that's true. That one doesn't have a TSA. This one does.
Yeah, but it's that wouldn't drive that. This would be a time where it'd be really handy to be able to right click and peek into visions and see how those 2 records are set up.
Right, because you can always scroll to the right. Well, you can do it here in this grid. You can see that she came in from visions with 2 records.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for all we know, maybe it's cleaned up, but until I get all my homework done, we can't load this demo data because it's sterilized data from a real district.
Right. Yeah, this is when you would right click on her here and say Infinite Vision Details, or you can do it actually from within this form here, Infinite Vision Details. And it would do a live look into IV, into her pay record or whatever it's called, and maybe give us some more information about what happened to her. And it could be, like Scott said, it might be fixed, but when this was reloaded and copied into the model, at that time it wasn't fixed. So,
Or this is one of those situations where they decided to move, consolidate and pay all 8 hours out of one account code, but payroll didn't realize that she is split, but it's the same account code, and so they didn't combine the two positions or the two records.
Right. Yeah. I mean, one thing we've always learned when we go to new districts is they all of a sudden realize some of their IV data is kind of dirty because they pull it in and things like this happen and they can't figure out why. And there's usually a little bit of cleanup involved on the ERP side because it exposes issues like this that might, normally wouldn't come into nobody would notice it, but when you try to pull it into ESP to start working on it, it becomes an issue. So that's the plan code and how we get the annual rate. And I wanted to find.
Could it be something as simple as she's teaching in 2 different schools?
Well, no, because she would have a different center.
Oh, that's the center is, yeah, you're right.
Right.
The code is, yeah, okay. So it can't be that. Yeah. All right.
But if you looked on the employee details, if you looked at the work location, I mean, because in some cases, particularly with like special ed or music, they might be based out of one school, but their budget is out because the account code is budget based.
Yeah.
But their work location might be different. I mean, that's another thing that could cause that.
And that's not in the code. Okay.
It's in the work location is there. It's on the employee details, or it's actually a lookup column.
Yeah, you could add it. I made one employee who had this pay component and I want to find it. And a good way to find it is just sort. You can sort on any column you want. So I want to sort on this column, sort descending, which is highest to lowest. And that brings up, by default, it's alphabetical over here. But this gave me what I was looking for. And the reason I say that is because you have 3 types of pay components if you look back on this sheet, because you'll notice annual rate is different than salary total. And your districts might say something different. But and each one of these is editable, and I'll show you how to do that in a minute. So you can change it to whatever matches, and it doesn't match exactly my sheet here either. Annual rate does. And this one says total salary. This says salary total. I'll show you how to change that in a minute. But if you can see, to get total salary, you have your annual rate. That's part of the summing. And then you have any pay components that are configured as a salary, which means it's going to stay with the account code of the parent salary account. And all the pay components are set up on the assumptions tab. Here they are. And you notice that you've got little different icons over here on the left. And this one, this extra duty one, is configured. If you scroll down to the results section, we're saying salary, include in salary. And notice that there is no default account mask. Like these other ones, like coaching, it has a default account mask, because we're saying it's supplemental, keep it separate, roll any money there into 0131. All the other budget elements stay the same, but for extra duty, we're saying salary, include it in salary, whatever the employee's account code is, keep it with that account code. So that's why you have annual rate plus any pay component that is configured as salary equals salary total. It does not include those other pay components. We haven't got to that point yet. It's just any pay components that are configured as salary plus the annual rate to get total salary, which might or might not, maybe doesn't mean anything to you, honestly. But that's just how we differentiate that. And really it's to track where to put the result. And then between salary total, you have the other pay components that do roll up to a different account code. Let me,
Right.
Sort on that. So then you have your salary total plus any of those pay components to end up with total pay, which are, these are the dollars that they get for working. Total pay. This one, we have longevity. Right click. If you want to add pay component columns, you right click, go to the model because we're working in the model. Go up to pay component. Here are all those pay components that we saw in the assumptions. We know extra duty. Okay, we know that was the salary one over there on the left. We already have longevity. This LTD one is a benefit. We'll talk about that in a minute. But the other ones are coaching. And if you hold down the control key, you can add one column, but it won't populate it yet. That way you can then right click and add another column. So you don't have to wait. So add the cell phone, then I will release the control key, it will populate. So that's a way of adding multiple columns without having to add one, wait for it to load and refresh, and then add another one. Hold the control key down when you want to add multiple columns. Because I'm full scoped, I probably shouldn't be, but I wanted to get that extra, somebody with extra duty pay component in there. It just, I have 1,850 records. This is always your record count down here. It's not how many lines you have, because you could have a bunch of, tree structure, but this is just how many individual records there are. And this one is your record count line number that you're on. I'm on line 2. Okay, so in between salary total and total pay are those 3 pay components that are configured to not included in the account code of the employee. They roll into a different account code, into a different object normally. Normally it stays with the same fund, function, center, sub area, but the object, if you go back over here to assumptions, you can see, and it's listed here on the right, like coaching rolls into its own object, 0131. So that on the financials, you will see, we'll look at that in a minute, but you'll see that the ones that roll separately, they'll have their own, line item that's coming from the employees, whereas the extra duty money will be part of the salary. It will stay with the salary account, 011, what are they, 0112 and 0111 and 0113. So does that make sense? So that's how we're going left to right. We're now added the supplemental, but and then it all ends up in the total pay. So back to the, my cool graph here. So we got this for total salary. Now here are the supplemental pay components, which means it's going to that different account code. So that plus that equals total pay. And that's basically all the dollars for the work type stuff. And then the next column are fixed cost. We give you a total, fixed cost total column. And because it has the tooltip, you select one, let it sit. These are the fixed cost. And if you guys might call them something different, a lot of districts call them payroll cost. Some of them call them benefits, which really confuses me because we consider benefits like medical benefits, but whatever you want to call them. And this is a summary of all of the fixed costs there: PERS bonds, Social Security, workers' comp, unemployment. And it comes right after the total pay column because that's the number that it's using to calculate these. You can see like Social Security, 7.65% times total wages. And that's how you get. And this number 21,671 is a summary of our summing of all of these numbers. The individual costs are there. If you wanted to add them, you right click, model, go, there's a fixed cost submenu, and then there's all the individual payroll cost, fixed cost there if you want to add them. By default, the total is usually all you need. Between that and the tooltip, you really have all you need. But if you need to show the individual columns, they are there. And then after the fixed costs, we get to the benefits. So here's fixed cost, all those fixed costs we talked about, which get calculated on the total pay. So total pay plus the summing of all the fixed cost on that total pay plus benefits. And there's two benefits. There's the benefits that come from the benefit plan that they're assigned to, which is via the salary plan. Remember, this person, this is a different person, but she, or Kyle, he is on the classified employee benefit plan. And all the benefit plans are set up back over here on the assumptions. So here's the classified benefit plan. So that must be assigned to plan 8, and that's how it gets sent to him. If you want to see some details about that plan, you hover over it and it tells you, okay, anybody 0.5 or higher get $14.49 a month. Anybody, well, basically it's not configured correct because anybody would get the benefit, $14.49 a month. But a lot of districts use FTE levels. You could say between 0.5 and 0.8, you get this. Some of the districts in Washington are using work time now, which is the total hours worked in the year. There's a few different levels, and we'll go over that during training, the different levels of basically just qualifying people of what they get for benefits. So this person's getting $17,390 for that medical benefits. But as you can see on the assumptions, again, under pay component, there is a pay component marked as a benefit, which means that little red bag right there. You can see over here, it says benefit including benefits. And the reason why it's different is it still has its own object that it's rolling to, but fixed costs or payroll costs are not calculated on that amount. So that's why it's separate.
Oh, yeah.
It's a pay component, but Social Security, nothing is calculated on that. So that's why there's a benefits, and then any benefit pay components, those two added together equals the benefits total. So then you add up those 3 major columns, total pay plus fixed cost total plus benefits total equals your total cost or cost total up here. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. We'll talk about the pay components a little bit more in just a minute. But yeah, so that's pretty self-explanatory about how we get to the total cost. I don't know if that's ever really used because you don't really look at that here. You pretty much look at it when you get to the financials.
Yeah, it's just organized differently over there.
Right. Well, over here, you're best to look at it with with the object.
Yeah. So where it might be, the totals might be useful is when you're like in negotiations, you care about all the costs, say, of a co-op, including any impact on benefits.
Right. I made the mistake of coming over here with some scope, so it's going to load every financial item. Let me change my scope. Bless you, whoever that was.
That's my wife.
Oh, bless her. I'll reset my layout. Yeah, so now you can see like licensed. So that one pay component for that one person of extra days, it would actually be included in this calculated total here.
Yeah.
It doesn't get rolled out separate, but you'll see like extra duties, coaching. Remember, it was going to 0131. So that would
Yeah.
be the coaching.
Yeah.
It's basically just where it ends up. The result is really the important thing.
Yeah.
Where do you want it to end up on the financials?
Yeah.
So in their cell phone, you can see we try to keep the icons consistent with what you see over there and what you see on the assumptions tab. And then here's all the fixed cost. All right, so let's go back to the employees. And I'm going to pare down my scope a bit. So I just wanted to show you guys on the regarding these pay component columns. This column that you first add, this is like the total column of that employee. It's not editable or anything. It's just that's what's calculated on this employee. If you want to get into the details of where that number comes from, if you notice it's got this little hamburger menu there, a hamburger icon, which means if I click over here, notice there's no pay component menu. It's going to be right here. When I click on the actual pay component column, it knows that and it creates an extra menu for that column. And for that pay component. A lot of the stuff you don't need. Really, the only things you really want are enable and factor. So if you click add common means that those are the ones that most commonly used, which is usually the enable, the factor, and the percent. So in this one is configured to work with the daily rate, the employee's daily rate and the number of days. And because factor override is checked and qualifier is used to say, okay, only people making this amount of money or only people on this salary plan, or there's a million different qualifications you can use. And you want to try to do that so that you don't have to go in and manually add any qualified people, because that can become kind of tedious. But if you can figure out a way to separate and delineate who gets a pay component, then we can try to configure it so that it's done automatically. But some you will have to go in and override that they get it, and then you can override as well how much they get of the pay component. But you have to make sure those two are checked in order for these columns to be light green. So that light green means it's editable, and the blue box. So in this case, this person, I don't know how it got started, but she's getting it, and it's 3 times her daily rate, 100%, $439. So when you add just the pay component column initially, it's only this total column. And only if you need to go in and start trying to figure out how they're getting it or why they're getting it or how the number's being calculated, you might want to right click and go to the new submenu just for that pay component. So here you got extra duty, but then if I go over here and right click on the cell phone pay component, I now have the cell phone submenu. I can look into that. There is a new, Tammy, you might not know about this, a new prohibit. Let me add that. Because it used to be that you would go in and make all these changes. And then a lot of times you would say, oh, there's been a lot of people that are getting that now in visions, and we need to reload the employees and move those in. Well, it would just overwrite anybody that it would requalify them, and it would give it to people you didn't want it, or vice versa. So we now have a prohibit checkbox, which means just leave it alone even on the reload. So if you do reload the information for this pay component and you tell it to overwrite the model just for this pay component, don't touch this person. If they're getting it or not, it doesn't matter. You just click that. So even if this person is not getting it in visions and we're set to use the actuals, if I reload and then copy this pay component into the model, it will still leave this person alone as getting it. It used to be that you would have to remember who it was, go back in and reset it after every reload. So now you won't have to. I know Rhonda down at LBL had that issue a lot last year. If I want to get rid of these pay component columns, if you can right click and individually hide individual columns, but I don't want any of these pay component columns. So you can right click one level above, and it will get rid of that whole little pay component section right there. So just a quick way of hiding. All right, any questions? When we do training, we'll go over a little bit more on how to set up pay components. This, I might as well talk about this. If you try, I made a change, and notice as soon as you make a change up here in the upper left, the save and pending changes form, they go active. Normally those are not active until you make a change. It detects a change. And I made a change, and then I went to change the tab, and it's saying, there are unsaved or unapplied adjustments. Do you want to apply these adjustments before switching to the grid? So I'm going to say no. Another thing I could do, if I made changes and I don't care, I don't want them, you can just refresh, and it just says, are you sure you want to refresh, because you're going to lose all the changes. You can just go ahead and click refresh. But it does detect, I'll show you, just so you don't think I'm lying. Normally, as soon as the form loads, those are grayed out. And as soon as you make a change, sometimes you have to press enter for it to detect the change if it's in a field like that. Detect. And if you sometimes you wonder, well, what did I change? You can always look. Usually there'll be a little pencil, editing pencil, next to what you changed. As well as you can click on this show pending changes. It's a little cryptic, but it tells you kind of what the property was and the old value and the new value. And this is the kind of stuff that would get saved in the audit. So it writes this to the audit, so we know, okay, this was changed, this was the old value, this is the new value. And also have your comments and who changed it and the date and time as well. You can always either refresh, or you can undo your change, and it's smart enough to know that it's back to where it was and the change goes away. Talk about finding employees. There's two ways to find employees. You guys don't have this icon. This is just for support. But the third one from the right is find employee, and this is called in database. So it basically means regardless of the scope, look for an employee. So just click on it. I was searching earlier in this morning's class for somebody named Adler, and these are wildcards. So if you only know part of the name, or you don't feel like typing the whole name, just put in a few letters and then give it a wildcard, beginning or ending, and then click OK. It'll find anybody, first or last name, with ADLER. So I've got two Adlers, a Harry and a Seth. And notice it limits it basically does like a QBE and just gives you that. And then you can make changes and do whatever you want to do, just like you're in the employee grid. And then when you're done, you can click this reset context. It will take you back to the scope you had before. If you know that the person is in the grid that you're in, or if you're looking for maybe a certain value, a number value, you can use this. This is called find in grid, search in grid. Basically, you have two options. Search, if you're looking for a name, you would leave tree column. This is what we call the tree column over here. And then entire grid, if you were looking for like a number or a work center or something that is in the grid, you would change it to grid. So, and I guess whatever you have selected is what it sticks in there to begin with. And as you type, it will start searching the grid to find. Let's see if there's another 438. There's not. But let's say something easy like 182. Just one. Oh, yes, the entire grid. It starts going through all the 182s that it's finding. So just a way to look for a number or look for a name, but you have to know that they're in the, and it doesn't change the scope or the grid to just that one employee. It just finds them and highlights them. If I want to get out of, I have all these pay component columns there and I don't want them there anymore. I can just reset the layout, which is right here. Or I can go back to this save grid view, click on it and click on reset there. And it resets to the default. I was talking earlier about changing these column headings. So if you right click on the column heading, not all of them can be changed. I know this one can. You notice that this top level up here is update column label. So you could click on that and then you can name it whatever you want to name it. Click update and it will. And it's across all scenarios too, not just this one scenario. So you're changing it for the system wide. So if you don't like it, you can definitely change it. There's another way to do it if you want to, if you need to change quite a few of them. If you go to Tools, Administration, Table Crosswalk Editor. This is just a warning saying be careful because it's your system settings. And if you, these are all the settings on the left. If you go to Application Settings, here's a lot of your application settings, rounding, FTE rounding, the FTE calc method. A lot of these are set within the app, but this is the main place where they reside. Anything that you see with the word label, like years of service label, can be changed. Salary plan, if you wanted to call that from step to schedule or from plan to schedule, anything that you want, you can change it here. There's quite a few settings. I wouldn't get too crazy in here about changing things other than anything label. Salary plan labels. So you can just make your change right in here too if you want to change a few of them. There's the FTE calc source, but normally those are set on the salary plan, so you wouldn't want to come here and change them, but you can make some changes here. Just be careful what you change. And remember, it's for all of your scenarios, not just the one you're in. Okay. Any questions so far about anything? No? Let me look at my agenda here. In the grid, you'll see that by default, normally just work days, work hours are changed. which is true. You can add other columns to change things within the grid. Like if you wanted to change their plan code, you could add the plan code column. Anything that's like a drop-down list, it's under this list submenu. But in this case, it's under salary plan because it's more salary plan related. So I'm looking for plan code, plan ID. You can lay out the salary plans if you wanted to here and change them. Not that that happens very often. Okay, that's just the ID. Sorry, there's so many columns it can be tough to remember which one you need sometimes. Was it? Maybe it's just plan. Yeah, plan. Right. So here's a list of the plans if you wanted to change someone's plan. But you would also need to show the grade and step columns really so that you could assign, because if you can change their plan, you're probably going to change their grade and step as well. But these are all the salary plans that you would see on the salary plan column. But you'll notice that anything that's editable is light green. If it's not editable, usually that means it's like a calculated amount. You know, it's not something that you manually punch in. It's something that is derived from something else. It's dark green. An exception being, besides the work days and work hours, is their account code. And you can use the account code to move someone. If you notice, you click on there, it's light green, blue border. If you click on this ellipse right here, come on. There it is. It populates with their current account code. And you just make a change. So maybe you're just moving this person to a different center. So all you need to do is change that, but you could change other options for their account code if you need to. Leave a note, click OK. Oh, it's remembering all of my clicks. It didn't move them yet because you can make multiple moves or multiple changes and then save. So I'm just I made one and there's the pencil. So I know I changed something. I can look at the change log. Okay, I'm changing the account code, the old value and the new value. But okay, that's all I want to do is one change, save it. And this is a note for all of the changes, not just the specific one. Double click in there. It will remember your last note. So that's kind of a shortcut. You can just double click. But don't get too used to that because then you're just putting in the same note every time. If you want to see the process log, if it doesn't pop up, you can click right here. We like to see it just so that any anomalies will stick out. It takes a few seconds because it has to actually create a whole new record. It sees if they qualify for any pay components. It checks what their benefits is. It checks what their annual rate is. It has to rebuild all that for the record, the new record.
So if you make any of those kinds of changes and then you load in new data, it overwrites it all or not?
I mean, you would have to reload, and you reload only into the blue columns. Yeah. You would have to check a checkbox and say overwrite my model.
Yeah, okay.
If you do that, then yes, it would.
Okay.
But you have to manually say overwrite my model. which,
Yeah.
you know, you're not going to do that often.
Okay.
Only in the beginning when you're getting started and you want
Yeah.
to say, okay, this is where I want to start. Let's copy over. So you're not going to be checking that checkbox to overwrite your model very
Okay.
often. So I moved, I moved him. This is what I suggest. When you move someone, it's good to have where you're moving them to in the grid, because I moved him, but how do I know? I don't see him, right? Because I moved him to another center and I'm only looking at center 31. So what I would do here is right click on him and say show all. Or put his new center where I moved him to into the grid. But you can see when we move somebody, we leave their record there because they do have visions data. That means that, hey, they came
Yeah,
in from
right.
visions there,
Right.
but we move them now. It's purple meaning it's new to this scenario. And so there's basically his new line. And you notice there is no, obviously, visions data for there. And if you go to the comments, you can see where the original, we said we moved him to and where we moved him from. Those are just automatic comments that we stick in. We moved him to 039 from 031. So if you move somebody, we automatically, I think if we're splitting as well, we put in these automatic comments for you. So you can go back and see what happened when. You can always, maybe it's supposed to be on this one. Let me see. I don't know why the audit's not showing that move. Maybe after it will after a recalc. But you can always look at the audit to see it as well, the full audit. So I'm in this context menu and I can click here to get back to the scope I was in. But I recommend when you're moving people, have where you're moving them to in the scope as well, so that you physically see it gray out in one area and pop up in another. That way you know you didn't make any typos. So I would just add center 39. And when you're doing your scope, you can do comma list in here. So instead of doing 31 through 39, I could do 031 comma 039. Or if I wanted all of those, I could do a dash, 031 dash 39. And notice he has a red and blue icon next to his name. That means he has a funding somewhere else within the scenario. Gerald Adcock does not have that, so this is his only funding. But anybody that has the red and blue icon next to their name means they have another funding. It might not necessarily be these two. There could be a third funding. You would have to do a right click, show all, to make sure you knew how many she had. If you move the employee back, it will just overwrite and bring that record right back. You can't, a lot of times we get asked about deleting an employee. So, well, can I delete this line now? And the answer is no. Just because it's best to have it there, especially since they have visions data. But they are, anytime it's grayed out, I'll show you, you can, I gotta save. You can inactivate employees and it will remove them from the budget, but it leaves them in there, but it just grays them out. There is no, the only thing you can delete are things that you've added manually yourself. Like Ethel here, this one I'm not really deleting it, but I'm just moving him back, but it will go away. If I create budgeted positions, I can delete those budgeted positions, but you can't go in and delete employees. I'll show you how to inactivate them. Okay, so you can see it got rid of that original or that move to funding, and he's back to where he was. If I wanted to just take Gerald out of the budget, you can right click and let me find it.
Right, I think he showed us this
There it is.
yesterday.
Oh, did you? Okay, inactivate.
Inactivate, yeah.
Right. So you can inactivate, make a bunch of changes, and
Is there, as you're doing all of this, is there an undo function?
no, the only undo is the no. Once you save it, it's saved. We've talked
No, if you
about it,
haven't,
but we've talked about that, but it's quite hard. You can see all of the work that goes into doing
Yeah.
something. So it's not as simple as like a Word document pressing Control Z.
no, I just meant before you save anything, as you're doing something.
Oh well,
if you
yeah,
make,
that's what I talked about a while ago. Was just refresh.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you make a change and you change your mind, just refresh and it will
Oh, it's refresh. Okay.
refresh. Right now, it's flashing refresh, and the reason why is because I made one change to the line, and that's just saying that the grid really isn't refreshed because something changed in the grid. So before you look at totals and things, you might want to refresh. It's just a partial refresh. Only this one line refreshed is all it's saying. If you notice, it took out all the dollars. Scott, I thought we left the dollars in there and just grayed them out. No, we actually removed them. I guess we did.
If they're well, that it depends. It depends on the where they came from. No, if you actually moved them, did you move that person?
No, I moved him, but then I moved him back. But this was just a right click and activate. Let me try a different one that hasn't been moved. I could be wrong.
Yeah,
maybe the dollars.
If you moved him, the dollars will go away. But if you just inactivate him, that row is flagged as exclude from total, and they're gray.
Right. But I moved him back though, which was weird. So. You don't hear many people named Ethel anymore. No, it looks like it does just take the numbers out when you inactivate them. It grays out the employee, puts a line through it, and removes the dollars.
And all you did is inactivate?
Yes.
Okay, I'll have to check on that. We might have had to change that for the save to grid
and we
to
don't
work properly.
Yeah, and we wouldn't want this FTE being included. Well, there's no total up here, so. But yeah, it pulls them out of the budget. If we have this thing called pending, if you know Bernard needs to be moved somewhere, but you're not sure where yet, but you want to go ahead and take him out, we have this thing that's similar to inactive, but it keeps track of it, and it's called pending. Set pending. What that does is it puts a P, it makes him red, it takes him out. Okay, maybe this is what just grays it. It leaves his numbers there, but they are out of the budget. And he is what's just called pending status, which means, okay, before we finalize the budget, we need to, let me go ahead and save it because I want to show you. This keeps track of your pending FTE up here. We have somebody else in pending right now. So that should go to 2.0 or 1.8434 after I save. So that's just a reminder that there's somebody that we need to find an account code to move them to and activate before we finalize the budget.
Yeah.
But you know that they're not going to be in that account code. You're just not sure where yet, but you want to get them out now for reporting or whatever reason.
Yeah.
So notice the that pending FTE went up. And then when you do know where you want to send them, you could right click and you can just say pick up pending, which means remove the pending but leave them there, or pick up and move.
Pick up and move got an error.
Yeah.
Okay.
And basically it brings up the, it removes the pending and it gives you an account code to move them to. But if I just wanted to pick up the pending, it basically just removes the pending and puts them back. And you can see saving does take a few seconds. So it's good to make, make quite a few changes between saves. But like anything, you don't want to go too long, because if you have an internet connection problem or power problem, you don't want to lose too many changes.
Yeah.
Any questions? Nothing? Okay.
Oh,
All right. Let me look over here. Scott, did you want to talk about responsibility centers or grants?
Yep. Are we ready?
Yeah. Yeah, I went through my stuff.
Okay. I'm going to share my screen. You cannot share while the other participant is sharing.
Okay.
You being stingy, huh?
Let me stop share. There we go. Okay, now try it.
Okay. Okay, can everybody see my screen here?
Yep.
All right. So in the all week, I think when Tim and I have been presenting, we've been logged in as ESP Support, which gives us some other features that aren't that you don't normally see. Like you can see, all of a sudden now I don't have that little bug up here, the debug, and you can also see I'm only showing financials, employee salary plans, and assumptions. We were showing you the responsibility centers and the grants grid, because when we're signed in, those are always turned on for us. But I'm signing in as an app admin, which is the same roles that you all are in. I'm in an app admin group. And what I'm going to do is show you how to quickly set up your grants for grant management. And the first thing you need to do is make sure that you have the elements in your budget element configuration set for which elements are going to control your grants. So tools, administration, budget element configuration. You don't get in here very often, but when you do, you just need to be careful and understand what you're doing. You just don't go click happy. We do load this from the ERP when we first set things up, and we actually do load them and check them every night to make sure that nothing on the ERP has changed. But this is the definition of the elements: the fund, function, object, area, sub area. The abbreviations, these are the abbreviations that appear in the scope bar. If you wanted to change them to something else, you could do that right on this form. Has the minimum length, the pad length, the character that it pads with, they're all been zeros. And whether an empty default, it might use different characters. You can put in zeros or nines. Sometimes nines they want as a default. But then it defines the fund element, the program or function element, and all the different elements. But what we're looking at is this one right here, the grant. And there's two configurations that I've seen. The fund is always involved because they call it special revenue funds or grants. But then some people want to use the sub area to break down the grants into sub grants. Or you're using a single fund for all of your federal grants, a different fund for all of your local grants, and a different fund for all of your state grants. And then for maybe a fourth fund for miscellaneous grants and endowments. But we're just going to use the fund just because it's simpler to show and set up. But you can set it up with two elements. And so that's already set to my grant that we're going to use the fund, so I don't have to make any changes. But that's not what gets you the grant tab. What gets you the grant tab is you come over here and you open up the little user administration. Keeps popping over on my other screen. And this is where you define, well, first of all, I also copied the database that Tim and I had been using, our demo database, to our development database. And I deleted all of the grant data that was there, and I deleted all of the responsibility centers. So we're starting out with just a bare bones user administration. We have just a default admin, an app admin, which I'm signed in as this guy right here. And then we have a grants, responsibility centers, and responsibility centers for snapshot. Administrators here, and then snapshots up here. And here on the user administration, if you look on this department tab, it shows you capabilities or security capabilities. I always recommend not setting up individuals, but set up the department. And then you can see there's an inherit checkbox. Have all my users inherit from the department. But if you do have somebody within a department that does need to be unique, you can just uncheck that inherit and set them up. So here's the main tabs. You can see that we already have visibility to the financials, employees, salary plans, and assumptions. To get the grants, we just check that we want to show and we want to edit, and to get responsibility centers, where you want to show and you want to edit. If in responsibility centers, you might, if you're not going to let your managers actually update staffing, but you want to give them visibility to it, you can let it show, but they can't edit. They'll be locked out of all changes. They can still do scoping and navigation. They just won't be able to change anything. And also, you may not want them to have full access to the employee details. And since we've added those quick functions for adding budgeted positions and vacancies, and most editing can be done right in the grid, it may not be necessary to give them full access. On responsibility centers, we do want to let them recalculate scope and employees. And the budget office should have everything, scenario versioning. In the budget office, if you're an app admin, these checkboxes don't really mean anything because you have access to everything. But now when I save this, it's going to update the security for me and the whole group. And when I do a refresh, all of a sudden I now have the grants and the responsibility center tab. So if I go to the grants, I look and I say, oh, darn, there's no grants. So how do I do one? Let's just, there's a couple of different ways. There's a slow way to do it and then a fast way. The slow way is you have to add them individually. If I click add new, if I go in and I look at my fund elements, and because we told it that the fund was the grant element, that's the only thing that shows up here. If we told it was fund and sub area, we'd see fund and sub area. And I'm going to go down and add 201, which is Title 1. And I'm not going to put a revenue in there. I could put a negative revenue in there if I were entering a new grant, but I know I already have Title 1, so I'm just going to leave it at 0, and then when it calculates, it will set it all up. So I'm going to say testing new grant adding. I'm going to click add. It added it. It's in the grid, just like everything else. You hit the cheese wheel. Boy, now that Russ is gone, we can't joke about the cheese wheel anymore. Russ called that the cheese wheel at the top of the form. And we're going to recalculate that. Well, I guess I could tell a joke. So two school administrators and a teacher walk into a bar. No. So you can see it went out. We only added one grant, but it went out. If it calculated the revenue expenses, total expenses, FTE. If there was a float factor there, there is a default float set up, so it's set up 48,000 in float. The grant is not balanced, so we're out of balance by 155,000, which is beyond the float amount. We calculated an indirect cost of 50.051 or $245,000. If I go over to the right-click context menu, I can show budget, and it's going to change my scope and show me the budget for Fund 201. And you can see here's my indirect costs, my revenues in there, and my grant is not balanced. We're over 155,000. So if we were to take PERS employer contribution, we probably don't have a single item that we could. Well, we could change the revenue. We could add 100. How much is my float amount? Let's add.
So did that go into Infinite Visions, pull the data out, and then
No,
populate?
because we had all the data in our budget. We have it all there. So all it did is aggregate it and then do some calculations on it.
Okay, all right.
So if I wanted to add, let's see, minus, what are we over by? 155,000. So let's add 200,000. Oops.
Just write us a check.
Yeah. That's 20,000, one more zero. Okay, so yeah, we'll see if this works. Oh, it did a spread adjustment, and I suppose that would work. But it's going to go in prorate. It's going to put. Oh, you see, we have 101 prior year grant, current year grant.
Yeah.
Well, we actually don't want that. We want it to go in current year. Well, let's just leave it that way.
It doesn't matter really, right?
Yeah, we're just increasing the grant. And because there was no float accessible, we don't have anything in 410. See, now our grant is balanced, and it put the float, which is this icon, in 410, which is the default.
I see. Okay.
But we're still off by 93,000. That wasn't enough, but it calculates. I'd have to add. I'd have to spend. I actually added too much revenue. I'd have to bump that back down. It's just really an aggregation and a way to see all of your grants and where they are on one grid, and save the spreadsheet, do everything else, and it also gets you your indirect costs. You can have indirect costs that use the system or the scenario default, or you can set them up individually. You can control globally where the float goes. You can control globally where the indirect goes, or you can override it for each and every grant. And you can, here's the indirect cost. It goes to 690, which is indirect cost. The default indirect is 5.1%, and it's going to base it on revenue. The balancing or float is going to go into 410, consumable supplies, and it's a default of 1%, and it's also going to calculate the float on the revenue. But these are all on the grants columns. Now I'm going to run a little command here. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. That's going to clear out all that project data again. I'm on the dev database. Okay, so that just lickety split, I can do this. And again, I've got no more grants. So the quick way to do this is to go to your budget element maintenance window, which I think I I gave you a glimpse of earlier this week, and it was uglier than snot. But now everything's actually looking really, really good. So here's all my funds set up in a hierarchy. In budget element maintenance,
Okay.
if your funds, if the element is in blue, that means there's either an employee or a budget item. Actually, you could say budget item, because if there's an employee, there'd better be a budget item to support it. That means there's a budget item that's actually using that element. So you can see the gray ones, there's nothing currently using that. But if I go to,
But some of them are like they're the same. They're the same.
it's
So
because many districts do a odd even year wobble, where
okay.
the even last digit is for the 1 year, the odd is for the next, and they toggle them back and forth each year.
Okay.
So on the budget element maintenance, I have a grants column. So I can come in, let's see, if I come into status, is in use. Tim, you didn't put a sort on this. Do I have a sort? Oh, man. Darn it.
We talked about that, adding the sort toolbar buttons up there.
Actually, that was for the process or for the scenario audit. But see, if I could sort on this flag, I could pick all the blue ones and just and add them. But okay, so we'll go add. And some of these may not actually have dollars in them, because it could be other scenarios or snapshots where it's actually being used. But I'm just going to click a bunch of these.
Tammy, are you at work or at home? Just curious.
I'm at work.
Oh, okay. I thought, all right. You have your own office? I thought you were like out in the middle last time I was there. Maybe you moved.
I am. I'm still in the middle. I'm facing the hallway.
I see. Okay.
So you see the windows behind me, but in front of me there's the hallway and the filing. I mean, I could give you the 360 view.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
So that's I selected quite a few of them. We're going to save and apply this. I am going to add to the grant recalc a remove empty. So if you add some that aren't that don't have any dollars or aren't really applicable, when you recalc, it's going to allow you to select remove empty, and if there's nothing in it, they will just pull them out of the grant tab. It's amazing how just working through these with users, little things come up like that. Also, while I'm here, because we did flatten all of our budget elements into just a single fiscal year, there used to be a little drop-down box on the toolbar where you could select which fiscal year to look at, but that's gone since it's just one now. But you have the ability to look at just a single budget element. It's like I selected funds. So now we've just got the funds in here. So if you're working on setting up the hierarchies, it's a lot faster if you just deal with one element at a time. Okay, the other thing, did I show you this while I'm on here? The state codes aren't here. Oh, not state code, state narratives. Did I show you guys this yesterday? Where I loaded the state narratives from our cloud database. We're actually going to get them. We get them from ODE, and we're going to maintain them. So here's an example where this is the state narrative from the PBAM, and this is a narrative that we typed in. But if we decide we don't want to, if we don't want our narrative anymore, we want to take the state's narrative. All you have to do is go in and delete this. And then when you refresh, it's going to say, oh, I don't have my own narrative. So I'm going to go ahead and fill it in with the state narrative. So now the state's there, and it gives you the ability to edit it. And the rule is if there's nothing in the narrative in the database, it'll fill it in automatically with the state narrative. So I created a bunch of grants. Now I'm going to come over, and it'd be nice if all of a sudden I refreshed and I'd get all my grants, but that's not the case. You have to recalculate the grants, and that's going to go out and discover all of the new grants that were created or that were flagged. And it's going to do all the summary and the math and everything else to figure out what's going on. And it only, out of all of those I checked, it only found 11 that actually had any dollars in it. And so now if I go into my indirect, there's several options, and it's under the indirect. I can give it a fixed amount. I can tell it I want to use the indirect, the default indirect. And if I do this, it's going to use that 5.1%, which I'll just check that. And the float is the same way. You can set up.
I see.
You can set up a fixed float amount, or use the default float, which is at 1%. And I'll set all that up. And then you can also, in both of those, you can actually change the account mask of where it's going to go. So I've often wondered, the indirect cost in a special revenue grant is actually revenue into the general fund typically.
Right.
So I've been wondering if there's a method to madness to put in indirect account, like a result indirect account mask, where you can put in and tell it to go ahead and create a revenue account or item in the budget and accumulate all of your indirect costs from special revenue. Something we could easily do if anybody has any feelings. Otherwise, I don't know, do you do a budget transfer, or do you just sum it up and plug it in as revenue? Tammy, any idea on that?
We don't charge indirect.
Oh, you don't charge indirect? I know.
No, because it takes away from the program.
Yes, that's right. Cherie has said that. They don't charge indirects because they want to give all the money into the fund, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to change with a couple of them, and when we do charge the indirect, we'll journal entry it over.
Okay. Yeah, we could talk about that if you wanted to maybe experiment with mapping it directly into the budget.
So I was surprised actually, because Portland, I mean, you built this for Portland originally, right?
Yes.
And they actually have revenue as a revenue source that they budget in the general fund.
Yes.
Revenue for I forgot the terminology.
Yeah, it's
revenues. I think it's something charged to grants.
Yes, I couldn't tell you what the account code was, but like I said, we could easily put in a result account mask and map it right into a account code in the general fund.
I'm just looking at our revenue here. Let's see if I don't see any revenue source in ours. Oh yeah, same. It's 1980 fees charged to grants.
There you go. So 1980.
1980 on the revenue side. Yeah.
What function and department is it in?
I don't know. I'm just looking at the resource summary page, and it's 1980.
Oh, I didn't check the use default indirect. Darn it. Okay, I'm gonna just do that real quick. Hopefully.
And it's the same thing that Portland does. It's the fees charged to grants.
Okay. Yeah, we could easily automate that budget transfer, that journal entry in the budget. Yeah. You'll have to do it. You'll have to do it yourself. Although if you actually load your budget from ESP, then the journal entry would be there for you.
Yeah.
But it may not be actuals. You'd have to adjust whether it's the right amount or not.
Well, I should look. I need to. Am I getting revenue on here? I think so.
I'm not sure why. That's really weird. This morning it calculated this perfectly. I erased everything again.
Jim, you might need to show the, in the scope, there's a filter and you can add revenue and fund balance. By default, it's usually just your expenses you're looking at.
Yeah, that's what it is. Oh, I see. Yeah, I click the dot, click the box.
But you can see, well, there's a few of them that are in balance, but not many of them. This one is in balance. Okay, so the second time it calculated, it picked up the 051 and then the indirects. And again, you can right click show budget, and it's going to switch you over to the financial grid and show you, here's the indirect charges, 619, is that right? No. Oh, I didn't calculate the scenario, the whole thing. I calculated the grant, but to get it to roll up. Here's another thing when we're talking about grants. This was added this year. When you get to the end of your budget cycle and you're ready to publish your budget or finalize it, or you're having trouble with your prior year actual snapshots, you can actually cause it to calculate the ending funding balance. If I go fund balance and object 9771, I thought that was the right one. Oh, it doesn't like, it said it didn't like the fund, but that should stay a wild card. Okay, it didn't validate it. But you can include your prior year actuals and the daily snapshot, and you can select which funds you want it to automatically balance out so that they show a net zero revenue to expenditures. And if you want to do the general fund in your model, you have to specifically click include model. Otherwise, it's not going to touch your model. It's only going to do it in the prior year actuals. But if you do this, it's going to calculate your ending fund balance as an asset or fund balance account for you at the end of the year. It's kind of like without this at the end of the year, you have to go in and figure out, okay, what's my balance going to be? And it should be planned. A lot of people don't want to do anything automatically because they want to see what it is, but you could easily just actually through the year, you could figure out what your balance going forward is. I'm not going to do that though. I'm just going to recalc. Oops. Let's take that out. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It was loaded in. The fees charged to grants is already loaded in there.
What object did you say it was?
1980.
Okay.
Good year.
Right before miscellaneous.
Okay. It's all done. And now I've got my indirect charge as calculated on the grants, 24,939, 24,938. It's off by rounding of $1. That means I probably it's probably got some decimals hanging on here that I didn't round out. But on the financials, it's rounding to an even. On all of the factors on the financial grid, we generally round to zero, to even dollar amount. So now let's see, this isn't the one that was in balance. If we go to the grants, if we pick one that, is this the one? That's the one we were looking at. It actually says it is in balance. Maybe not. Did I refresh this after it recalculated? Okay. Fixed amount. Still off by 72,000. Is that what this says? 72,091. Oh, but see, our float amount is only 4,800, 4,900. So that's why we're way over our float. So that's why it's not balanced. If we were to change the float amount, or if we were to spend another 73,000. Why won't it let me?
Is it because you're in a sum scope?
Well, why is it letting me do indirect? Isn't that weird?
Yeah. Oh, because there's nothing to spread it to.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it's zero. So what I'd have to do is open this up. You have to have something to spread to, otherwise it can't do it. So let's just take this down here. We'll look at the whole grant. Expand it out. Where's my see, and it does spread the indirects out proportionately. Now there is a mechanism I built that, but I wrote it down this morning. I'm going to have to test it. If you go into your indirect account mask and were to put a hashtag instead of an asterisk in the account mask for like the second, for the fund or for the function, it will apply the indirect charges to the function that has the highest net dollar amount being expended in the grant. So you burden the highest function in the grant with paying all the indirect charges, or you just leave it normally and it's going to spread the indirect charges out across all elements in the grant. But if I put in, let's just put in 73,000 in EAP, save that. Look at Tim, it's left justifying the variance again. This variance column should be right justifying, and I tracked that down last night and everything's set up, and when I opened up last night it was right justifying.
Really?
But now it's left justifying.
It's just
that's gonna be fun.
It's just not justifying.
And I can't justify why it's doing that.
You justify why it's left justified?
I just have no justification.
Sounds like it.
No justification for the left justification.
Yeah. Jim, do you remember Dave Hyam?
No.
Okay. He was working special projects back in the era. He's actually the one that hired me for the project at PPS.
Oh, okay.
He was a project manager down in, worked for Scott Robinson initially.
Okay.
And then
I'm just I'm getting too old to remember.
Yeah. Oh, I did it backwards. Because now my amount is, wait a minute, if I had a negative float, yeah, I did it backwards. Where did I put that? I put in what, 70, it was on EAP. Oh, but EAP is calculated. Oh no, it's at a fixed amount. Oh, 73,000, that's where I put it. So we're gonna zero that. And we need to, where's my revenue up at the top? See, there's, no, see, it started out right, justified, and then it switched. All right, let's see if we can wrangle this thing in. I'm not sure the nature of all these grants, but to me, it's all just data, but it should balance out.
Okay.
Okay, then we're gonna move on really quick. We only have 20 minutes. Okay. And I still didn't get it right. I'm gonna have to follow the logic through and figure out I must not be adjusting things right to get it to balance. But I need to do a bulletin on these calculations so it's clear. But it definitely is moving things. It's just not. I'm not adjusting the budget properly because it's showing the 141 out of balance.
Jim, I put that document, I just copied it into the chat. So I believe it's there to download.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Okay. If not, I can email it to you if I'm not sure how easy it is to download. Probably pretty easy.
Yeah, if I can, where's the chat?
It should have popped up when I sent it to you, like flashing maybe.
Let's see, unless it's being covered by the.
Just look at your Zoom window.
Oh, I have to put my Zoom window.
144, 370.
I have this restricted Zoom window here.
141, 370.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So again, I'm gonna have to figure out why the float isn't working as expected. But I think I'm just probably doing it wrong. Oh, because the float amount is still only 4,000.
Jim, actually, if you could paste me your email address, that would be good too. I need your email anyway.
Did they create a GAPS address for you, Jim?
A GAPS yes. It won't let me save it onto my home laptop. That's the problem.
Jennifer said she'll send it to you, but I still need your email. Oh, there it is. Okay, Jim, I got it.
Yeah. Okay.
Jennifer sent it to me, and she's going to send you the document. Thank you, Jim.
Okay.
All right. She just sent me a chat message. Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So to set up your responsibility centers, you go back to the user administration form, which is on the toolbar. It's got the little like org chart with the body and then the window form. And we're going to go here to responsibility centers. And we're going to say create, add responsibility center from center list. And this, we've set up the default element to do this as the center element from the budget elements. And I'm just going to go in and pick elementary schools. Shuckson, Hood Middle School, Adams Middle School, Rainier High School. I'm gonna leave all the learning academies and all that stuff out. It's just, I'm gonna put in administration. I could put in student services. That's probably enough to get the gist of what we're gonna do. But it's pulled up all of the items that are in the I got elementary, middle, and I want to do district. Oh no, district office that's going to be something else. Okay, so I'm just going to click OK, and boom, it just created a bunch of responsibility centers. And at this point, I'm just going to save it. Oh, before I do that, let's switch tabs. This is kind of fun to watch.
There we go.
And I'll click apply.
Oh yeah.
It's over here cruising along, crunching all these numbers. Okay. And then I'm going to go in and, why didn't it? Just recalculate the responsibility centers. And boom, we've got the responsibility center grid with all of the centers I set up. And then I can go back in and I can say add from a name list. And this is just generic names that we've set up. If I do schools, middle schools, elementary schools, high schools, administration. I'm going to use district office instead of administration. So it's going to create, and it would prompt me for a scope, an access scope for each one, if you needed it. But it's going to pick up the center ID for each of the centers that we created it for. So I'm just going to say no. So it did that, and then I can come in and take my centers and actually create a hierarchy. Gracer Peak, Hood Middle School will go down. Elementary schools. Rainier High School will go up to high schools. Scott, let's see if I move Shasta up to the middle schools. Oops, and then I can take all of these elementaries, move up, somebody, I wonder who that was, spelled elementary wrong. Actually, I did that just to show you can edit also. And then like student services would go into the district office, administration, district office, and Adams Middle School goes down into middle schools. And then I could put, come on, put my schools in schools. Uh-oh, I didn't like that. And oops, I better just save it and fix it up after it saves. I might be doing too many changes at once. It's got the tree confused. Yep, darn it. I tried to do that second level and it didn't like it. So we'll just do this. High school, middle schools. I'm not going to put that high level in elementary schools and district office. No. Save. Recalc responsibility center. Well, that's probably what I did do the last time is I didn't check the recalc responsibility center. Because a lot of times you don't want to, as you're adjusting your hierarchy, you don't want to have it recalculate the structure every single time. And the great thing is once you get your hierarchy set up, it's global. You don't have to worry about it unless something changes. And so now you can see the responsibility center tab is matching the same hierarchy that we're building here. Each of the centers has picked up the ID or the center ID for each of those centers. You don't have to go in, but you could go in and put in like 009 through 0019 if you wanted to. You actually will need to do that as you start to assign users. You'll have to give a scope. The all dashes mean no access. So you start out with no access and then you gradually add in access. So we start at the top, no access, but now we've got center 009. If you needed to add or remove, you can actually create additional account masks. Like if you wanted to say, they also can access center 631. So you can add multiple account codes and you can build these up as long as your ARM, and you can put comma separated lists and ranges in there to build up your responsibility centers. The other thing is different districts involve their administrators at different levels. If you are not going to allow your responsibility center managers to manage employees, then you could turn off. Well, you want to turn off these tabs anyway. You want to show them their responsibility centers because they want to see it so they can submit it. But they'll only be able to see the responsibility centers that they actually have control over. Turn off employee details, turn off that. Shared funding, we'll leave that on, no spreads. And I'm going to save that. We don't need to recalc. Oops, my monitor. It's like a time. It's about the same length of time before it does that. So, and if the responsibility center managers, you're only going to give them access to purchase services and expenditures that are non-salary, you can come in and do 0300-0699 or whatever. At Washington is a different accounting layout, but you can put a mask in there. So now the allocation scope is 300 to 699. What that does is it's going to preserve two sets of totals, or create two sets of totals. We're going to have an allocation total, which is what's allocated directly to the responsibility center managers. And then we're going to have the district totals, which will include all of the staffing or anything that's not in, actually it will include everything, but the allocated will only include 300 through 699 objects. Now, did we talk about substitutes this afternoon? That was this morning. We had some good dialogue about how substitutes are managed. If you've got a separate object code for substitutes that the administrators can allocate for, like when they're going to send somebody to a conference or that they're going to pay for that substitute out of their budget, you can put in 00123, 0124. I think those are the two objects for their classified and licensed substitutes. So that would actually make your allocated scope look like that. And then when the responsibility center managers open up ESP, they're going to get a very, very limited view. They're not even going to see, they're going to see the financials tab and they're going to see the responsibility centers tab. And in their financials, they're only going to be able to select items that are within their scope that you've given them access to. And actually, this scope here, you'd probably want to put 100 in there, so they only can access the general fund. Because everything else is going to be something else. Or if, Tammy, do you have more than one general fund?
No.
Okay.
But we would possibly have student body fund. We have a fund for that, and general fund. So that would be.
You could set up a whole nother responsibility center for just those funds. So now I've got. You can see on my grant, and there's a ton of. You can have the actuals here also. I have some saved grid views. Let's look at the managed or the allocated. So here's a view. It's got a scenario status or a budget status. Starts out new. As soon as an administrator goes in and makes one change to his budget, it's going to automatically switch to in process. We haven't assigned any approvers, but all of the users that are in there could be assigned an approver. The allocation source, if you want to use last year as the allocation source and you wanted to give them their allocation for this year, you want it to be equivalent to what they had last year, you could set all that up. I think it's just entering a 0. Let's see. So that, yeah, so it's going to set up the new allocation based on the allocated amount last year, and calculate what their total is. And you can also include FTE in this. so that you can allocate. You're allowed so many dollars, but if you're only going to do fixed purchase services and fixed costs, then you don't need any FTE anyway. So that's the layout of the managed. But if I just reset my whole layout, you can see my allocated amount is significantly different. It's 131,000 for Bonanza Elementary, but the district total is 4.2 million. So you can see how just the allocated amounts. It's interesting. Why is Baker Elementary the same? The allocated amount is the same as the. I would have to look at that. Let me recalculate that. If all else fails, recalculate. Because I would expect to see much less dollars in the allocated or the manager's amount than I would in the district amount. And any budget item that's not included in a responsibility center will automatically be included in the budget office, which is an automatically added responsibility center. So that's really weird. Look at that, 52,000. What's going on with Baker Elementary?
Privileged.
Privileged?
Yeah.
Let's see.
Superintendent kids goes there.
Yeah. So we want to reset just expenditures. General fund. Center 009. Is it? No, 0009. Baker Elementary by object. Oh, you know, I might have had a right-click context menu to do this right off the. $4,778. Oh, but it's basing it on last year's. $5.2. Where is that 5.2 coming from? When it's only got 4,778 in there. Did I mess with something over here? Oh, that's what I did. I added in a whole nother responsibility center. Okay.
Gotta be careful.
So we're going to delete that. I thought I had actually taken that out. What do we got? 259. And then there's so much you can do with this with Budget Book, but we're going to do a totally separate section on Budget Book. Okay, so now let's see what this looks like. Okay, 247, 730, but that still doesn't look right. I don't know where the 500 is coming from. Oh.
345. Okay.
It's only I might have hosed something up on this development database. But anyway, I will look and figure out why. It's because it says that's model allocated amount. This should be the amount of the model, which is not 52. Oh, actually, it's saying that that's what their target is, but that's not what it actually is. So, but we've told them that's what it's doing. We've told them that they can have up to 5.2 million in their responsibility center. They've only got keep showing the darn employees. If I'd lock my scope, I'd get a much smaller group. There we go. Oh no, I don't want to lock it now because if I switch back. So the budget is 4778, but we gave them an allocation of 5.2. And so that's why it's showing that. Yeah, see, I can actually right click and say show budget, and it'll switch over and show the budget to me. Okay, so once these are all built, you can actually create responsibility center sheets using Budget Book. Oh wait, I'm still on the dev database. I'm gonna real quick, because that's not set up. File, database. Okay, so Tim, did you run that scope?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I didn't mean for it to be some like that. Oh, on the financials, yes.
Okay.
I mean, that was on the employees, but you must have opened up in financials.
Yeah. Something's. Sometimes when I switch back and forth from a development to a demo or a production database, there's subtle differences. Sometimes the app complains a little bit. Okay, budget book.
Wow.
Tim, are you able to open the budget book profile? Oh, there, now it's coming. Okay. So I'm going to switch back to my RC worksheets. And so this is a really simple setup. What I've done is I've set up my modeling scenario, which is that Tim's got 2001-7, but I was working with 2005 modeling. I'm looking at 18-19 actuals, 19-20 actuals, 20-21 actuals, which is current year, encumbrance, and then the total amount, and then an entry amount and comments. So the responsibility center managers could submit their budgets with an Excel worksheet. And over on the sections, I've set it up. Again, we could spend days talking about budget book, but I've set it up to where it can separate by the responsibility center and all the elementary schools. But I've limited it to only show me the first two of those responsibility centers. Just while you're debugging and working in budget book, trying to get all your formatting and layout and stuff squared away, it's sometimes helpful to not have to run every responsibility center every single time. So to generate this, and I've got this configuration set up to create a separate worksheet for every responsibility center. And then when it's actually published, you can actually have it saved to a folder and actually create a separate Excel workbook file for each responsibility center. Tammy, did you use these this year?
The responsibility centers?
No.
No, we didn't do responsibility centers last year.
Did you send out worksheets to the managers and principals and administrators?
No, we still have a lot of work to do on training on that. I do monthly spreadsheets where I show them their budget and their actuals, and we can meet and talk about them.
Okay.
I don't know that we have empower them to that level.
Right.
Well,
you could at least use this to generate the Excel spreadsheets that you talk to them about. So.
Yes, which right now I do an export out of Infinite Visions of raw data into an Excel document template that I created, and it does a lot of like auto-populating, and then I have some checks and balances, and so this would probably, I'm waiting to see what the output looks like, but could be a replacement where I don't have to do this, because like literally right now everyone's like, where's my monthly sheet? And I'm like, I've been covering for people and I don't really have time.
Well, and not only for data entry sheets, but you can create monthly budget status reports that actually have a amount remaining, a percent remaining, and they colorize it plus and minus. If you, let's see, if you want to hang on, I can show you what they do at Jefferson County. They actually have been sending these out for a couple of years this way.
Yeah, and I exclude like the maintenance from their available to spend budget, so that way when they're looking at decisions for hiring or filling and they're trying to figure out, do I have available resources to fill that position, then they know what that is without maintenance and facility money, because they don't really get to spend it.
Right. So that's how you could control their centers, by using that allocation mask.
Right.
Now, one of the things that you can have different allocation masks for different levels. So like for special programs within the district, you could have, they could be wide open, or for elementary schools could have a different mask than even high school. or the middle
Right.
school. So you can, it's pretty granular. And again, it's somewhat time consuming to get it set up and tested, but once it's set up and tested, it works pretty well.
Okay, yeah, and I could probably, are you able to like roll up the payroll to just like benefits and salary totals?
You can,
I know, I always ask for the moon, always.
You can actually do that through the budget, through budget book with the hierarchy. So yes, you actually could.
Mhm. Yeah, because I tell them just like, this is your salary total, this is your benefits totals, and then these are your 10 or 12 lines you can spend from.
Right.
Yeah, you could just limit it by scope, right?
Well, limited by scope, but to do the roll-ups on the budget element maintenance, you would create an just a salary account, and then that element you would set the level that it would roll up to. I'm trying to think for really special stuff where you want to show a different level for some elements and a collapsed or a summarized element.
Right.
We've talked about the concept of creating multiple roll-up hierarchies, and you get to pick on the budget book which ones to use. It might take something like that to totally emulate what you're doing. Or I could, you'd have to write some special logic to create a separate custom sheet.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, everything exports to Excel, so it's also, it could do the data, and I could just do a quick sum hide the sum.
Right. So this actually, I can already tell it needs some work visually, and I just didn't have time to clean it up since I screwed it all up this morning. I'm gonna unprotect the sheet so I can change this, because I needed to set this column width out further, and the account mask needs to be made narrower. But then you've got your actuals, prior year actuals, your current year actual encumbrance, and then the total working. And then here's where they could put in what they want to submit for next year. But this is actually too, that's why something's wrong in the hierarchies. What did I do? It should have been a lot cleaner than that. So we have responsibility center, which is going to separate by, then function area. Oh, we have two levels of object in there. We have a summarized object, which I don't want. Then I'm going to say area. Do you give it to them by area and function, or just one big long?
It's just object. They only get to choose by object. I guess the high school, that's not true. The high school, they do see area as well, so they know what their athletics budget is.
But do you show them function or just area?
When I'm doing my reporting, I give them the full account code for every line that they are able to spend from.
Right.
Hey, Earl.
But it isn't, it's just like in a list.
Hold on a second here.
Okay.
So it's not broken out.
To abbreviate it, we'll take that out, because you know how the budget book summaries work. So I'm just going to summarize. So it's going to come out area and object. And I'll save that. And I could have sworn I put in a width column for the account mask, but I changed that to 42. But I don't see it here. I'm not sure. There should have been an account code there, so I could set the column width for that. Okay, now if I generate just one of these, it should be a lot faster.
So are we,
I cleaned it up, the formatting up, and it's going to be a much more abbreviated and a lot cleaner worksheet. And then we'll
Okay.
be done. So here you go.
oh yeah, look at that.
So I've got it protected, but I got to figure out, well, that should be auto sizing. So you've got your area and then your objects, your full account code. At the bottom, you can put instructions at the bottom or at the top. And it's got the account element definition because a lot of managers don't know that, it's fund, function, object, center, area, how their account
Yeah,
code
right.
is structured. So you can all selectively include that. There's just a lot of functionality. You can have it break down at further levels. If you want to break it down at a lot more levels, you can eliminate the account code. But this gives them the ability, you can set it up. It's pre-populating their proposed amount from their total working, or you can have it be totally zero and they have to go in and actually put an amount in. And in this case, we are, do I have salaries in here? Looks like I do. Oh, I do. I think there's an option. Responsibility. Oh, it should be using the managed scope or the allocated scope to create that. But I'm seeing
Things that they wouldn't normally be able to control.
right.
Yeah.
Actually, it's looking like it's inverted.
Yeah, but I think I get the point.
Yeah.
Of
So
what you could do with it.
And these will possibly in the next 30 to 60 days, be able to automatically email them if we have the email addresses in the Responsibility Center managers list. So, but Jim, one strategy the districts use is they have a shared network drive or a Google Sheets drive, and they generate all of these as individual sheets, and they come out with the center's name. They put them in a folder, then they send an email out saying, hey, the worksheets are there, go fill them out. And then when you're done, move them to this folder. But the alternative is to use the web app, which we're hopefully going to look at tomorrow. And you don't have to generate these sheets. You just have to, from Scenario Explorer, identify which scenario they're going to be accessing. So, okay?
Okay. All right.
Okay. So we'll talk to you in the morning.
Scott, just one thing I was going to tell you. I've been doing a little bit of work on the problem with the FTE.
On the rounding,
on the rounding. And the FTE was off and the salary was off as well, but not to the same degree. What I found was that the salaries are only off on vacant positions. So really? I don't know why that would be, but the salaries are that you're calculating are the same as what's in Infinite Vision for any active employee. But the vacant positions, the calculations are off, and they're consistently, you're calculating a higher number that's in Infinite Visions, even though the FTE itself is off sometimes one way, sometimes the other way, sometimes not at all.
Right. It depends on how. It depends on it's truly a rounding, up or down.
It's not a round. To me, it's not a rounding issue because the direction is always one way, whereas the FTE is off different ways.
Right.
In the vacant, and sometimes it's right. So I think it's something in the way that Infinite Visions is in a vacant position. The salary figure isn't consistent with the placement on the salary schedule for some reason.
Well, some vacant positions they may not even have a salary schedule.
Well, if they know that you're getting an entry in every case in that field in the plan code. So coming out of Infinite Vision, it's using that to calculate salary on the model side. But whatever salary is coming out of Infinite Vision doesn't match, or sometimes it matches, sometimes it doesn't, sometimes it's too low, sometimes, no, in fact, sometimes it's too low and sometimes it matches.
Okay. I'm opening that up. We can just take a quick look.
Yeah, I got another meeting.
Okay.
Well, I still got 10 minutes, so.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Because this is a time where, let's see, we'll right click Infinite Visions, work on a vacancy. Because the key of one of the ways you detect a vacancy is you see the funding record, but no actual employee's been assigned.
Well, these are actually listed in the name column as vacant position.
Right. That's just, I give it that's an artificial name that I give it because there's no employee assigned.
Yeah.
So if we have you got one in particular that?
Yeah, can you look at the one that I have on my screen? Oh, okay, yeah. Go run just the classified employees and the classified employees.
Okay. This one?
Are you in our budget? Yeah.
Tammy, don't feel obliged to stick around if you don't want to.
And then if you go down to, well,
I
have them all shown in one big group as vacant positions. So
well, I can actually do this filter.
So go to vacant position 66799. It's easier if you sort it somehow alphabetically, and then all the vacant positions will show up together.
Well, I just changed the filter on the scope to just show the vacancies.
There you go.
Okay.
So then if you do the calculation, if you compare the Infinite Visions FTE with the model FTE, you'll see the difference. Sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative, sometimes not at all.
Right. And then the actual salary amount.
But if I was doing the plans, the annual rate, you compare that, and sometimes it matches, sometimes it's the let's see, it's the Infinite Visions rate is sometimes lower than the model rate, but it's never higher, and it's sometimes the same. There, you got it.
That is on
and it accounts for all of the difference in the total.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So it's only in the vacant positions.
So something to think about is when we load the employees from Visions, we do not alter the position annual rate, the rate that's on the funding record. But when we calculate it, if there's a plan code assigned, we're actually using the amount of the plan code. So if we look at this.
Right, so that's what I'm saying. I think in Infinite Vision is where the
so this, we're looking at 42,370. Wait a minute.
But that one actually matches.
Oh,
right?
Yeah. Let's look at this one off by $450. So we're looking at 37,024, but it's a fractional. So it's but the FTE is off by just a hair.
But like I say, the FTE being off doesn't seem to influence it.
Yeah, let's see what
because look, they're all consistently under. Even
right.
Sometimes FTE is lower, sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's the same, and yet
model work time. So if we take 1302, Tim, do we find I don't have the hourly rate on here? Do I have the hourly rate? Oh,
you the salary plan or okay, yeah, because you have both of them, the salary plan and the employee's hourly rate.
See, what this says to me is there's got to be something in Infinite Vision unrelated to the FTE, because the,
I think that's correct. The FTE does not correlate in Visions to the salary like it does for us.
Scott,
Yes,
our
that's
these are
right.
just manually entered, right? These FTE
Well,
revisions?
I don't know. I don't know how much validation and how much work Infinite Visions does in their data, in their payroll details form. So if
Tammy
I
can tell
do
us.
calculated,
I'm just, for any active employee, it's going to be right because they have an active employee getting a paycheck.
yeah.
Yeah.
If I multiply the work time times the salary plan annual rate, I'm coming up with, actually it should be 14 or 14,341. Oh, that one's right. Where's one that was?
Yeah, you have to pick one
Here we
that's
go.
wrong.
23,175. So see, I'm calculating based on the salary plan hourly rate and the work time. But now let's look at Infinite Vision's details, and we're looking for that 22,720. See, 22,720 this annual. So that's the annual rate that's coming from Infinite Visions, flagged as an open position.
And it's just got to be wrong.
So, but see, Jim, this could be just a when it could have been when the position was created, that it picked the salary up at that moment and plugged it into the vacancy, but you know, the salary plan, a COLA or something changed slightly, and so that's for the vacancy. It's off by that much.
But it's not true of all of them, and so
I said, it depends. It could depend on when that vacancy was created.
Yeah, that's
9-3 is the position start. Well, it's position.
Right,
Though.
but that's not when they actually created it.
Right.
It you know, if we looked at what's the percentage of 456 divided by 22,720, it's 2%. Did you guys give a 2% COLA last year? Do you know?
I don't know.
For classified?
I don't know.
Let's, because see, this one's off by.
It wouldn't surprise me if that's what we did. Yeah.
So if we say 21,501 divided by 431, no, that's the bit wrong. 431 divided by 21,501.
Yeah, we did have a 2%.
So it's 2%. So what that tells me is these vacancies were created before the new salary plans were updated with the 2% COLA. And so the ones that are right were probably created after the salary schedules were adjusted.
And then some other ones that are way off were created further back, maybe.
Could be.
Yeah,
normally, I don't know. I could look, because that, now that we've kind of dug into this, I will look because I'm going to be looking at the employee loading and fixing these link ups for the other districts tonight. It'd be nice if I had an update date or a create date. You know, yeah, the position start and end date, that doesn't have any bearing on when the record was actually created. So
what this says to me is the FTE number that we're calculating is correct. And because they're actually using that number to calculate salaries, they're using more than 2 digits to calculate salaries. They're just only showing us 2 digits because our salary numbers normally are matching.
Okay, so let's look.
So to me, I'm willing to just say the FTE numbers in the calculation are correct. And we really should go into Infinite Vision and have them, they're actually using a 4-digit to actually calculate salaries. So that's what we ought to be getting out of the system.
Yeah, but see, I'm actually, this is an untouched number. So on the funding, on the pay and funding, pay and, what do they call it? Pay and something. Because I don't, in this view of the data, I don't massage these numbers at all.
Yeah, all I'm saying is that the
Yeah.
number that they're calculating is matching our number
Right,
using the 4-digit.
right,
And so it's something, whatever that number is, it's not actually making the calculation.
right,
Yeah.
right. So what I hear you saying is you're actually pretty happy with your fiscal base for employees.
Well, I was only looking at the classified because that's where the biggest one was, and I'll look at the rest of them. But
Yeah, the certified are so much easier, and because
yeah,
you don't have nearly the
I
splitting
don't
and
think
movements.
we didn't have a big change, but yeah, it was like a revelation to see all of the differences in the. And
Vacancies.
actually, your explanation is good because it explains why it's all one direction.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Sweet.
All right. See you
All
tomorrow.
right. Talk to you
All right.
later. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye, Tammy. Scott, did you, can you still hear me? Scott? Hello, hello? Hello?